Hello YouTube, this is Ernest with Team Zero Time. Today we got a 2003 Peterbilt 387 with a 6NZ cap. A little bit of backstory on this truck. Customer just purchased it, used truck obviously, been parked for a while. It's in here for air conditioning work and whatever, just little stuff. We're going to do an engine health test on this one, just to kind of see where it's at. See what he's up against. Okay, so one thing that I've noticed is that we have white smoke when it starts, cold start. What is white smoke? Most all of you know. It's either going to be, fuel. We got air in the fuel system, or coolant leak. But truly, what is the cause for white smoke? The actual cause for white smoke, the root cause for it is a cold combustion. That's really what it is. Okay. So at startup, that cylinder's not hot enough, and it's a cold burn, and it's gonna smoke white, and then it should clear up after a few minutes. Once the cylinders reach operating temperatures. Okay. It doesn't mean that it goes away. It just means that we have a problem, and we have a cold cylinder. Why is it cold? Diesel engines rely on the heat of the compression, to ignite the fuel. So if we have a head gasket that's leaking, and we're leaking coolant in there, we're also, the coolant's what's going to cool down that cylinder, but we're also having a weak compression, right? Because we're going to be losing compression. We got a leak. But what it could also be that we have rings that are leaking, valves leaking, something to that effect, something that's causing a weak compression, which means it's going to be cold, and which means it's also going to, it's weak compression causing a weak combustion, right? A cold burn. Now after the cylinder reaches up, top operating range, well, then the heat from the cylinder helps to eliminate that. Okay, so that's one of the symptoms that we do have, and I'll show you, the white smoke when we get it started. What I want to do is I want to hook up the laptop to it. We're going to check for some, codes or what have you, and then we're going to do a test, cylinder test, and see what the laptop is showing us. Okay, and then from there. Then we're going to hook up the scope, and we're going to look at the relative compression test. So then we're going to go from there, and then we'll go to intake and coolant and exhaust. If we have leaks, we want to know where they're at. So that's the plan for today. Stick with me. Let's see what we got. As you can see, there's the smoke. So let's figure out where the smoke is coming from. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this truck run. We're going to get up to operating temperature, and then we're going to do the diagnostic test, the cylinder test, and then we'll take that information, and then we'll start testing the engine and see if we can find something. Maybe we can find something wrong. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. But we're going to do that. So I'll get back with you when it gets warmed up. Alright, so now I'm going to do a cylinder cutout test and see, gather some data from here. Then we can compare it to what we were finding on the scope. And maybe we'll find something wrong. So we'll do that right now. let me shut it off and let it cool down a little bit, and then we'll take some tests with the scopes and see what we can find. All right, so we got some testing done. What I did was an RC test, a relative compression test, and then from there, well, we went to I went to do the coolant pressure test. You know, we've got the white smoke, and the white smoke that is a symptom of a coolant leak. So I tested there, and then we did the crankcase pressure test, and then from there we went to the intake. So let me show you some of the results, and we'll go from there. Okay, so this is the RC test, a relative compression test. I had an amp clamp at the battery, and I have a I'm synced to number 1 injector. Okay, so if you'll look, you've got number 1 injector, so that's number 1 right there. And then because we know the firing order, 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4, and we're back at 1. Okay, so we know we got good compression on number 1, we're weak on number 5, and then when we got compression on number 3, and we're weak on number 6, and then we got pressure on number 2, and then we're weak on number 4. Okay, so pressure has to go somewhere. All right, so now I want to know where that pressure is going. Okay, so the next test we're going to do is a coolant pressure test. So we're going to do the coolant pressure test. Okay, so on this one, we're using a delta P sensor, okay? It's not an absolute sensor. In other words, I can't give you actual pressure amount, you know, 5 pounds, whatever. What it does is measures the difference in pressure. Now, the advantage of using this sensor is that it's very sensitive, so it'll pick up on real small changes, okay? So what I do is I go into the coolant reservoir, and I get my my waveform from there, okay? And again, I'm synced to number 1, so we know where our firing order is, and then we'll figure out which ones are bad, okay? Okay, so this is my coolant pressure waveform. So again, I'm synced to number 1, and because we know our firing order, that's 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4, and then we're back at 1. So we're not getting as much contribution in number 1. We're getting more contribution in number 5. Again, we're getting not very much on 3. We're getting more on 6, and then we're weak on 2, and then we're getting more on 4. Okay, so if you remember the relative compression, we were low on cylinders 4, 5, and 6, right? So we were low on pressure. We were low on pressure on 4, 5, and 6. So we were low on 5, but we're high on 5 here. We're low on that's 1, 5, 3. We're low on number 6, but we're high here, right? And then we're low. I mean, we're okay on number 2, but we're high here, number 4. So pressure has to go somewhere. So we were losing compression, and we're losing it into the coolant system, okay? So I like this. Again, we can put a pressure test gauge on it, you know, and which I did. I did it to confirm it. I just put it on there. I didn't even pressure it up. I just put it on there and then with the idle, let it run and see how much pressure is building up. And I'll show you the results of that. But with this test that I'm doing here, not only can I tell you where the coolant leak is at, I mean, that we have a coolant leak, obviously, but I can tell you where it's at. It's not coming from the air compressor. I mean, because we're in sync with the relative compression test, right? So it's coming from the cylinder head, right? We got a blown head gasket, whatever. So, but it's all in sync. So pressure has to go somewhere. So we're losing compression in number 5. We're losing compression in number 6, and we're losing compression in number 4. But if you look at this, 5 is up. That's where our compression is going. 6 is up. That's where our compression is going. and 4 is up. That's where our compression is going, okay? So I also took a crankcase pressure test, so we'll show you that one. All right, so this is our crankcase. Okay, so again, we're synced to number 1. So we want to see who's contributing to the blow by, who's contributing more, who's contributing less. So what we have is cylinder 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4, and then we're back at 1, okay? So 1 is contributing, 5 is not contributing very much. 1, 5, 3 is contributing. 1, 5, 3, 6, not very much. 2 is contributing, and 4, almost nothing. And then we're back to 1, okay? So the reason that it's low on the crankcase pressure for cylinder 5, 3, 6, and 4 is because if you remember, our relative compression, we're low on 4, 5, and 6. And if you look at our coolant pressure, we got added pressure in our coolant, and it's coming from 4, 5, and 6, right? So because we're losing compression in 4, 5, and 6, and it's going into the coolant, well, we're not contributing that much into the crankcase. Does that make sense? And so that's where we're at on that, okay? The next one I'll show you is intake. Okay, so this is my my intake. Again, we're synced to number 1, but this one's going to be a little bit different on the firing because it's obviously not going to pull vacuum while it's under combustion. So I mean under power stroke. So this is number 1 that's firing. Okay, so if we go 360 degrees, that would be here. To the right of that would be the vacuum or the intake valve pulling in for number 1. So the firing order is going to start here. 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. Okay, so what we have here, if you look at cylinder number 6, I mean, it's pulling pretty good, right? And the line is in the middle, right? So that means we're pretty good right there. 6 is actually pretty good. Now number 2 is low. This right here, because as far as it's up, a rocker arm adjustment is not going to fix that. That's a worn cam lobe. We have a worn cam lobe there, right? And this one we have another worn cam lobe. The rocker arm is out of adjustment a little bit. It's a little bit loose, but again, it's high, and we have a worn cam lobe, okay? And then this one here as well, we got a worn cam lobe right here, okay? This one is out of adjustment. This one, we can adjust it to get it back, but if you see, we're to the right of that line, so we're a little bit loose, okay? And this one, again, we have a worn cam lobe, and we're loose on the rocker arm. Does that make sense? Okay, so remember, it's 1, 5, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. So number 3 cylinder is actually good. We have a good vacuum on number 3. So unfortunately, we have 1, 2. Let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 worn cam lobes, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4 rocker arms out of adjustment. They're loose. That's what's pretty cool about this. So if you look, I've got the injector harness disconnected so it wouldn't start. That way I wouldn't have to mess with the fuel. So I'm connected there. That's where I got my reference from. I have a hose coming out of the, I took off the intake air manifold temperature sensor. I took it out so that I have access to the intake manifold so I can collect my intake waveform, okay? I have a hose connected to my dipstick so that we can get our crankcase pressure, okay? And then, well, I had a hose. That's my coolant pressure port, you know, the coolant recovery tank. and I put a hose on that, and that's where I get the waveform for that. Does it make sense? Okay. And that's it. So it's non-intrusive. I didn't have to tear apart the engine to get all that information, spend hours and hours and hours. Spend hours and hours, you know, getting it done. So, but now, I mean, this is what we did. So there you go. It's got a head gasket leak. It's got 15 pounds built up in it, and that's just running the truck, idling, for about 15, 20 minutes. He's gonna need a head gasket. All right, so that's the testing that we did. We did an RC test. We did the coolant pressure test because of the white smoke. That's a symptom of a coolant leak. So now let's go there first. So we did that, and we saw that in the RC test that we were lower in compression on 4, 5, and 6, and on the coolant pressure test, we saw that we had higher contribution to the coolant system at 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and then we did a crankcase pressure test, and we saw that we had lower contribution to the crankcase pressure or blow by at 4, 5, and 6. So that's all confirming to me that that pressure went into the coolant system. See, pressure's got to go somewhere. All right, so we're losing compression in that cylinder. It's got to go somewhere. It's either going to go through the cylinder head, it's going to go through the intake, through the exhaust, crankcase. It's got to go somewhere. And in this case, it went into the cylinder head. Okay, so we know that. And the reason we did this was because of the white smoke, right? So now we can get with the customer and we can let him know what the results are. And now he can make a decision as to what he wants to do. You know, originally it was brought in here for the air conditioning. We talked about doing the engine health test. They had just bought this truck. They want to know what they're up against, and now they'll know. And then we'll see, you know, how far they want to go with it. All right. But at least he's got options. Okay. So it's best that we didn't throw all this money at the air conditioning and then end up with a bad engine. What good did that do? All right. So at any rate, that's what we want to try to do for our customers. We're trying to be as fast and as accurate as possible. And as you can see, I mean, we didn't tear apart the engine to do this. I mean, to do some of this stuff, I mean, it would take hours. I mean, you would do a pressure test in the coolant system, which makes no sense to me unless you're going to go pull the oil pan and start looking up inside, you know, the engine and looking for leaks. But if you got a pinhole leak and it's leaking into the piston, you may not see that leak. If you got a head gasket leak and it's draining back through the oil return, well, then you may see it. But I mean, you know, it's just, we can go on and on and on about it. But at the very least, I mean, at the end, as you can see, we didn't tear apart the engine. It didn't take all that long to do. It is pretty accurate. And now we know what we're up against. So I hope that helps you. Have a great day.